Mm, I'm a little bit sad actually, so I thought I'd come and talk to you lovely people. Um, I just want to say I love Adam Buxton's podcast. I love it. It was something I watched a lot during lockdown. And I want to say directly to you, Mr. Buxton, that I was sorely disappointed to hear, um, I don't know his name, ContraPoints, say that some name me on your podcast without challenge to say something that's patently untrue and to characterize me in a way to your enormous audience, really, really big audience, and you didn't challenge. And I feel in this day and age, the polite thing to do would be to give me a right of reply. So that's what I'm asking for. That's all I'm asking for. Simply a right of reply to the things that were said by ContraPoints. I think it would be a jolly good thing. I hear you also had one of my biggest fans on recently, Mr. Billy Bragg. He knows all about me. He tweets about me often. So, you know, I think it would be really useful. I think that would bring a bit of balance. So I'm just saying the polite thing to do when somebody on a platform as large as yours actually names me my full name, and says something about me that isn't untrue, I hope you can do the right thing. I think it's good manners if you could allow me a right of reply on an equal platform, which I'm guessing would be your podcast. Onto a wider point now, because I've listened to men and I find it really interesting, right? So, a really male thing is to not be able to empathize. And I'm sure there's perfectly good reasons for men not being able to empathize very well. And it's a big generalization, but I don't care. I don't care if it's a big generalization. I feel it's true. So, men find it a little bit more difficult to put themselves into someone else's shoes. I think certain things that, unless you've really experienced it, you have no idea. Um, and men certainly do that. And I think it's sort of a function of why men and women are different. And I quite like those differences. I'm not going to say that I would like to be married to an emotional wreck. I certainly am not particularly emotional. And I wouldn't really like it if my husband was like crazy emotional all the time. It would really annoy me. However, men just find it more difficult to empathize. That's why women, often heterosexual women in marriages, will know this. That sometimes they have to really explain, spell it out to their husbands. And like I said, it's not necessarily a terrible thing. You just have to manage the way that you speak about stuff, right? It's why men in groups don't sit there talking about their feelings too much, and women do because women can empathize and blah 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 blah. Hmm. Anyway, um, I what I think is really interesting is how men suddenly manage to find empathy when talking to men who wish to use female-only spaces. And I'm talking like broadly online, also in sort of discussions. You'll have a man who talks about transitioning, and the other man he's talking to will sort of really wear this empathy cloak, right? Really wear it. We'll really kind of talk about how it must have been so hard for you and what was that. And I think it's a penis thing. I think that men feel that if a man is willing to give up his penis, and often let's remember they don't, but that's not discussed. It's not like a man pretending to be a woman is saying is going to sit on a in a conversation or tweet about something like, "I'm really afraid to go into men's toilets because I like having an erection in a woman's toilet," or "I'm so much weaker since I've taken estrogen, but I still love getting erections." Or I get sexually aroused. Those things aren't talked about, and I'm pretty sure men must really know about it, but they pretend they don't. And I think that that's the key as to why men think, why would a man give up being a man? Because most men like being men. And again, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I really like being a woman. I'm pretty sure if I was born male, I'd quite like being a man too, right? So that's what we're talking about. And somebody who epitomizes this is James O'Brien, who will he's had conversations where somebody is called in about not wanting men who call themselves women in their toilets and female changing rooms. And here's this like, what's it got to do with you? And what are you doing looking under toilet doors? And why are you so funny about your space? And are you checking genitals? And that's the sort of thing that somebody in his position would say. And we see it online all the time. Yeah, if a man says, in fact, a man doesn't even have to say he's afraid. A man will just have to say that as a woman, he has the right to use a female space, and he will be told, oh mate, I hear you. We're here for you. Oh mate, we're here for you. I understand. Oh, that must be so bad. And I'm really trying to understand. I mean, look, with women, I think there's this denial that we are vulnerable. And I think that some women, especially younger women, and I'm not going to include women who have assisted in the medical abuse of their children who now identify as trans. I'm not talking about those women because we all love our children dearly. And these women are just, it's a very toxic version of that. So I'm not talking about that. But I'm talking about younger women don't want to face their vulnerability, so they pretend they've got everything and they can give some of their rights away that they never fought for in the first place, and they don't really understand. But when it comes to men who can do it, I just think it comes from a place of absolute ignorance and a complete lack of willingness to really see women as complete human beings. Because if you can sit and nod along about how difficult it must be to not feel like yourself. And that feeling thing that, remember, men don't really empathize. And I'm speaking generally, and if you don't like it, I don't care. Um, if I'm sorry, I'm just reading the comments. Um, if they can see a man who wants to be in a women's only space and they have empathy with them, I think like I said, it can only be to do with actually having a penis. And the only thing maybe those men can sympathize with is someone getting kicked it repeatedly in the testicles, or somebody wanting to give up their penis privilege. And I think it's really interesting that what I have found out through this, and I can't look. I'm not saying I haven't experienced sexism because I have repeatedly. I think most women have. I think if you've been on this earth long enough, maybe 7 or 8 years old, you face some sexism that you can actually see, that you could describe, not just some sort of ethereal concept of sexism, but absolute examples of sexism. And I've had it repeatedly. I've had it about my daughter when she was about 8 years old. I recognized like men being sexualizing my 8-year-old daughter when I lived in Bristol and it was in a garage. But the whole idea that some grown man, and it's often men with money, because men without money are not quite so silly about what life means, but men with means, um, they they seem to listen to these stories by these men, and they take those men and the validation those men need to feel far more seriously than the harm and the damage that those men cause when they seek validation. And I it's just really interesting. And I think that when a man, it's like at the moment, I see people who are more likely to talk about, say, somebody man spreading. So somebody is far more likely to talk about mansplaining and spreading, a man kind of patronizing a woman or spreading his legs too wide on a public transport and say that that is sexism. But a man dressing as a vile mockery and parody of a woman, talking in a half, they've got voices like that and they talk in a half voice and they talk like this. And that's how they talk all the time. um, it's less likely to see that as sexist. And it's just so interesting. But anyway, I just wanted to say that because I think often we forget that the reason these men get away with it is because they're men. That's why men are listened to more about their sadness, their validation, their fears, is because they're men. And what some men think, for example, some men who interview men who pretend to be women, what some men think is that women who moan about this, women who whine about this, have no valid reason to object. They have no valid reason to object to a man in their space. They refuse to see the fact that most of them have their penis. They refuse to see that actually, if you say the good ones can go in, and Christ knows what they are, but if you say the good ones can go in, then all men can enter women only spaces. And they refuse to see that women in women only spaces have a particular set of social rules and a particular way that we feel in those spaces that I'm afraid men cannot empathize with and don't understand. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that up. It's I don't believe that men don't know about fetishes. I just don't. I mean, I think it's willful. And also men. I, I talked to someone who definitely knows that a so-called trans woman, so a man in a dress, is really a man, right? I've spoken to someone. They happen to be on GB News, and I've spoken to them, and I won't name them. But it's not one of the sort of main people that I ever go on with. In fact, I don't think I've ever spoken to this person on GB News, but it's someone on GB News. And I was in a conversation and I can't remember what I said, but I say the same things. I don't wish harm to anyone, but I basically say that I don't accept them at all in our space. I don't accept men in our spaces. I don't ever use the language. And this person sort of treated me like I'd said something really offensive, even though they actually agreed. So they probably would use pronouns. And it's just very strange to be in a situation where that person, if they had a man in front of them talking absolute nonsense, that they would not have been quite so rude or they would not have responded in the same way to a man claiming that he was a woman, to me claiming that he isn't. It's like women, we don't even get to say who's a woman, even though we are one. We don't even have the right, according to some men, even nice men, even men that you would anticipate understand this issue, and men that claim to understand this issue. They would rather, every time, they would find it far more abrasive for me to say that that is a man and he's not allowed in our space than for that man to totally disregard the feelings of maybe 5, 10, 15, 20 women and go in a female only space. And I think that is the key to all of this. We now have to bring those men that already know the truth, that are still sitting pretty in this pretend sort of place where they think the middle ground is their ground, where they know that that's a bloke, they know that's a man, but they're going to give him the courtesy of allowing him to go into women only spaces because they're such great and tolerant men. So those men, I think we need to now start calling them out. I think we need to bring them very much into the fight, and they need to start actually sticking their flag um, in our side or not. Because at this stage of the game, you either are with us and you absolutely believe that women have the right to keep every single man out of a woman only space, or you're against us. It's as simple as that. Anyway, so Adam Buxton, I'm sure you tune in. If you would like to contact me, you can reach me on Twitter. You can ask your lovely producer actually to reach me on Twitter. I'm available at press@standingforwomen.com. It would be lovely to talk to you. And like I said, I think it's good manners because I've been talked about by name with nobody defending me, no right of reply, and I'd really like you to give me one. Right of reply, that is. Anyway, if you can just stick to the truth always, then I promise we will win. If you cannot let uh, those that seek to destroy your reputation without challenge, you don't let them get away with it, then I promise we will win. And if you and stand in the cold or the rain at the end of this month, and in 1 month's time in Leeds, I promise we will win. And do you know why else we're going to win? Because I never